Have you ever been sitting there and just thought, man, I want chickens, but you either live in an apartment or an HOA and you don't have the space or they're prohibited by law? Well, I've got good news for you. There's quail. I totally wish I had known about it when I lived in an apartment. Many apartments and HOAs have restrictions on what kind of animals you can have while living there, yet there are very few who have any restrictions against quail. Coturnix quail are considered wild game birds and therefore don't fall under the livestock and poultry restrictions that most HOAs and apartments have. Because of this, many of the most restrictive HOAs and apartments have to allow quail because they're not specifically put into it by name. There are many benefits to getting Coturnix quail. They're easy to care for, they average 300 eggs a year, and they take up far less space than chickens. Quail are actually great substitutes if you can't have chickens. I actually prefer quail over chickens. They are a lot smaller and they lay smaller eggs. You'll need to have between 3 to 4 quail eggs to equal 1 chicken egg, but the quail eggs have 13% protein where chicken eggs only have 11%. The quail eggs are also more nutrient dense. Quail also have amazing little personalities. They're so quirky. I have quail both in pens for breeding and an aviary. In the aviary, they hop around, they chase each other playing, they fly. Sometimes it's really a duck and dodge kind of game when you go in to feed them because they just get scared and pop up and fly around. Studies show that you can have between 1 and 3 quail per square foot. And I've had some people say that's cruel that you would even put 1 quail per square foot, but quail are really small birds and they love to be close together. I actually have had quail become more aggressive when I've had less than 1 quail per square foot. For some reason, they become territorial and they start pecking at each other, fighting, they'll even scalp each other. Quail are also extremely quiet. When I first got into quail, I had mostly hens and no roosters, and I honestly would forget they were there sometimes. Not like forget to take care of them, but they were so quiet. The only time I ever heard them was when I brought food out, and then it was like they're excited little guinea pigs and they jump on the food. And yes, I've heard people say, well, you should keep food with them at all times. I do keep food with them at all times, but quail seem to think they're going to starve to death when you take their feeder out of the cage to refill it. So when you put it back in, they act like they haven't eaten in days. The only time you really hear your quail is when you have roosters, and even they aren't very loud. They have a crow that sounds a lot like a loud songbird. If you don't have any need for roosters and you're kind of just worried about a caring neighbor, don't get one. You do not need a rooster for a hen to lay eggs. You only need a rooster if you want the eggs fertilized so that you can hatch them. Instead of wishing you had the life of somebody who lives out in the country, just take small steps where you're at. Quail require such little space that you can take care of them in a spare bedroom, you can put them in the garage, you can keep them in corners. Quail can be kept in anything from a rabbit hutch, a dog kennel that's lined properly to keep them in. I've seen people raise them in fish tanks. You could also build your own adorable little quail hutch. I've seen people put them in like a little coffee hutch and then they put hardware cloth over it and made a door so that they could get in. And you change the bedding in their cage regularly because they do poop a lot, so it will start to smell if you don't properly take care of them. As long as quail are given the proper light and ventilation and you clean their cage regularly, they do great inside. To prevent any issues, I'd recommend you look at your local ordinances and reread your lease agreements. But always remember, quail are very quiet and only a caring neighbor with binoculars will really notice them.